Whenever you're having trouble in your marriage, do you take time to stop and think, why are we having these troubles? Do you stop to think and analyze? Well, I truly believe that so many of challenges that married couples have goes all the way back to childhood. I talk a lot about personality styles and how that factors in. But many problems that we have as adults go back to childhood. And many times it's literally breaking the cycle. Because if you look at someone who is a bully, if you stop and you look at their parents, you'll find probably there's a bully in that family, whether it's mom, if it's dad, or if it's a big brother. And it's like the things that happen to us in childhood go on and on and on, and we continue to pass them on. So today I have Jaci Finneman, and she is the owner of, you want to give that, Jaci?
Yeah, no problem parents or no problem parenting.
No Problem Parenting. And she actually was in the very beginning of this podcast of episode 15. We shared about all about No Problem Parenting. You'll have to go back and look for that. But today we're going to discuss how we can identify these problems and how we can move past them, and so that we don't pass them on to our children. And the truth is that when we have these childhood problems, they are big problems in our marriage, and they make or break a marriage. I know one person, even right now, that I'm thinking about, the only reason they're still married is because they're a tough person. They don't give up and they just keep on going. So, Jaci, what do you think about whenever you think about the first thing? What do you think about kids with challenges that they bring into their adulthood?
Well, yeah, let's talk all things childhood trauma and how it affects our parenting and our marriage later on in life if it's left unresolved. I have a specialty in working with parents who are raising kids with attachment difficulties or attachment disorders. And that's when a child has experienced some sort of trauma in the first 3 years of life and in utero. And when that first year of life bonding cycle, when there's a break in it. And so many of us have had a break in attachment in that first 3 years of life. So I like to consider it almost a spectrum. Many of us, obviously, you don't remember it because before you're age 3, your memory is pre-verbal. So you often can't, you'll know something's wrong or that you have an issue with something, maybe, or connecting with in some way. Maybe you're not a hugger. Maybe you're vying for people's attention, to feel worth and belonging and that kind of thing. And you can't really pinpoint why that is the way it is for you. And oftentimes that comes that it's because something happened in that first 3 years of life where you experienced grief, separation, rejection from a parent, um, and or abuse or neglect, medical pain, where you didn't internalize the adults, the people holding you and caring for you, as being responsible for the good feelings you were having. And that I talk all about that in my No Problem Parent training. But it all has to do with that first year of life bonding cycle and how we form as infants, how infants form trust. And I'm making a circle because it starts with babies having a need. Well, what do babies do when they have a need? How do they let us know? They cry. They can't
Mm-hmm.
talk, so they cry. So in the step 2 of that circle is babies cry, and sometimes they rage. If mom can't get to them right away, dad's cooking something on the stove, can't go over and meet their needs right away, they clench their fists, they arch their backs, and they scream and cry, and it's really this kind of a rage inside, like that they're fearing they're going to die if their need isn't getting met.
Mm.
And so, what do we do? Step 3 of that circle, that first year of life bonding circle, is we gratify the baby. We pick them up, we rock them, give them movement, we look into their eyes, we give them eye contact, we're touching them, embracing them, holding them. We feed them, we smile at them, like, shh, it's going to be okay, right? We feed them. And in that feeding, in the bottle feeding or nursing them, there's lactose in the milk. Lactose is sugar. And sugar is what makes their tummy feel full and settled. And so when we do all of these things, the baby settles, they relax, and then they internalize the adult in that eye contact as, oh, you're the person responsible for this good feeling I'm having. You are safe, which completes that first year of life bonding cycle. And that fourth phase is trust. That is what builds trust. That cycle happens millions of times. I don't think anybody's ever counted how many times that happens just even in the first year of a baby's life, right? And the more times it happens and that baby feels that connection, that trust, that safety, that security, and that love, they build trust. But where the problem comes in is between the crying and the gratification. If there's a break, make like a jagged, and just sort of envision a jagged, break in between the two where the caregiving has been inconsistent. The parent hasn't been meeting the child's needs. Maybe the baby had medical pain, like colic, chronic ear
Mm.
infections. They were born at, we can deliver babies at a pound.
Oh,
At a
wow.
pound, right? A baby can survive at 1 pound, but their skin isn't developed yet. So if we touch it, it will burn. They're in the little incubators, and they've got needles drawing, nurses drawing blood. They've got the IVs in them and all these things that are hurtful and painful. And so sometimes a baby can associate the adults with the pain they're feeling, thinking that it is the adult that's causing that pain. That's an extreme example, but it's
Well,
very true. Kids that are adopted may be raised in orphanages until they are adopted from a family. They've experienced rejection, pain, discomfort, and it may have, not all, may have internalized the adult as being the one responsible for the pain.
wow. Well, that's really going back to something that, like, if you adopt children and that kind of thing, you have, no choice on that. Or if you have a baby early, I know sometimes moms try to go and sit and hold the baby or be there by them or just put their hand on them for that warmth. I
Mhm.
remember way, way back. I mean, I've shared several times that actually I just had my 34th anniversary as a consultant with Mary Kay Cosmetics, and I served as a sales director during that time. But in my first 2 years of marriage, I sold Avon. And that is back whenever you went door to door, and you got your customers, you saw them every couple of weeks and that kind of thing. And I remember a client in an older home. And, when we're younger, we don't pay attention. We're not aware of things. We're just kind of in our own little moment. And I remember a client that every time I went there, there was a child from the time they were very tiny, they were always in that playpen, and their head was a little flat, on one side. I never saw them held. The child never made any noise. They never talked, even as they got bigger in that playpen. And, it never occurred to me then because I was, busy talking to the person. I wasn't the adult, paying attention to it. But later, I don't remember when it was that maybe after I started having children, that really stuck in my mind that child was probably very underdeveloped mentally, physically, with their speech, everything, because they were in that playpen all the time. And
Mhm.
so children go through some strange, crazy things with parents who are having trouble dealing with life on their own, right? They're having trouble dealing with life, and they have trouble with that baby crying.
Well, and that's another good point is that, moms can have postpartum depression. And so, yes, they're going through the motions of feeding the baby, changing the baby, making sure those basic needs are kind of met. Obviously, the baby's surviving, right? But if they're not feeling that emotional connection and they're not able to reciprocate that with the baby, there can be a break in attachment. And the baby just kind of internalizes, I need to be responsible for the good feelings I have or for getting what my needs met or getting what I want. They're a really good tip, and I just had this on my podcast maybe a week or two ago, depending on when your podcast airs. I believe it was like episode 288 maybe, but I talk a little bit about the still face experiment, and your listeners can just Google that. You can watch a 2 to 3 to 4 minute video on the still face experiment, but it's where a mother is sitting across from her infant or toddler and starts, playing with the kiddo, cooing, laughing, having fun with the youngster. And then all of a sudden the mom goes still face. And it's interesting to see how that baby ends up being really uncomfortable, experiencing discomfort. Like, why is my mom not responding to me? Where did this playfulness go? And why isn't she paying attention? The baby will squeal, scream, arch their back, try to do anything to try to get this mom's attention. So that it's kind of an extra bonus listening today. Go search that still face experiment and
Hmm.
watch a video tour on it. We really crave that interaction and all about that first year of life bonding cycle, that gratification, eye contact, touch, movement, smiles, and sugar, basically, lactose. And that's really, all those things are what helps us as infants learn to trust adults. But what I wanted to say is that there's no shame if you are the birth parent and you have a child who is not connecting, not reciprocating your love, your affection, not listening to you, rejecting you. There, we can turn that problem into a no problem. I can help parents learn how to redo that first year of life bonding cycle years later. And the interesting thing about the work that I do with families who are raising kiddos who have attachment issues or challenges is the divorce rate for those families is
Mm.
like, at last I checked, like 80%. Because so often as that child grows, they most often reject the mother's love and comfort and care and attention. And
Why
isn't that
is
interesting?
that?
That maternal, kind of connection or bond, it becomes really scary for them, because if they were rejected or felt rejected once by that mom, whether it's the birth mom or an adoptive parent, or an adoptive parent, it's transferred from the birth mom to the adoptive parent. Even though the adoptive mom is like doing anything and everything to meet the child's needs, that break in attachment already happened with the first mom. And so it's too scary. That child can't verbalize this because it was pre-verbal memory, but that
Mm.
child's thinking, I'm not going there again. I'm not trusting that again. I was rejected. That was too painful and hard. It's too scary to do that. I'm not going to connect again. So they don't show other people the same rejection that they show that birth mom or that adoptive mom or birth mom for that matter. And
Hmm.
so dad often doesn't see that, doesn't feel that same rejection from the child. The dad sees the misbehaviors, right? The defiance and some of the oppositional stuff, but he doesn't feel that distance or that break in connection from the child like the mom does. So the dad will start doing things like, oh, you're overreacting, or you're just too hard on her or him, or, we say all this kind of stuff. And then
Heard
that
that.
makes mom more upset. Like, you just don't get it. What are you talking about? Especially if you have other children in the home and the other children are doing just fine. And you're thinking, the dad might think you're just too hard on that one, on that child. And the adults, the parents aren't hearing each other and aren't
Mm.
really listening to each other, which of course we talked about this in your episode 15. Communication is key. But let's say that child now grows up to be an adult and they get married and they've survived and they've done well for themselves, they're successful, maybe they're even super successful, but the connection stuff is difficult for them. They're really true, deep, sincere connection is really tricky for them, and oftentimes it's because of that unresolved trauma in their early life, childhood. So
So what are some, because I totally agree. And if you can't connect to your spouse, share with your spouse, be open, trust your spouse, communicate, talk together. I mean, those are the things that bring couples together, is sharing. Maybe it's past things that have happened that they need help with or they need to let go of. But it is when they bottle those things up
mm-hmm.
that it's kind of like a Coke bottle. You
Yep.
shake it up, something happens in life, and you shake up that Coke bottle, and it's going to explode all over everything. And
Yeah.
so that's what we see. So, what do you think are some of the top things that cause a lack of connection that is learned from childhood that does go over into adulthood?
Well, I think there's a few things. So if you have some unresolved childhood experiences, they don't even have to be traumatic. They could be, you grew up with a dad who yelled a lot and was really forceful, or a mom who was sad a lot or really uninvested, or parents that were working all the time and not really meeting, your needs. Whatever it is, it can be really traumatic. It can just be kind of a poor experience growing up. That kind of stuff, those childhood experiences, the trauma shape how we respond to stress, how we respond to conflict, and how we respond to our kids in parenting, right? If we experience neglect, fear, abandonment, we might unconsciously project those fears onto our kids and definitely onto our spouse by either being overprotective and not ever wanting, putting that bubble around them and not ever wanting them to do hard things or make mistakes or do risky things, right? Or we become super distant and kind of withdrawn and just sort of let the kids have full reign and control of the house. Um, when we might also sometimes we also react to certain situations, whether that's again between with our relationship with our spouse or our kids. Sometimes we'll like overreact. We have these heightened, like we put a lot of emotion into behavior challenges, struggles, or problems or stressful situations. And so we tend to often stick in that back part of our brain in that fight or flight mode anytime we feel triggered, right? By either our child's misbehavior or maybe an argument or something that we've had with our spouse, which that obviously causes a lot of tension in the family. The other thing is, if you've experienced any kind of trauma or tough experiences growing up, with your parents and how you were parented or your experiences, often you are more, this is something to pay attention to, you have more like a heightened sensitivity to criticism.
Yeah.
And often that comes with, again, like I said, that early life, just depending on how, if you felt the sense of worth, belonging, how your self-esteem was, you might, you might be overly emotional and feel attacked by your spouse or your child when they're upset with you about something, or they're frustrated with you or disappointed in you. And they may not even intend to, or they might even think it's that big of a deal.
Right. Because, however you've been raised and how your parents did, that's your normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't know what you don't know
Yeah.
till one day, suddenly, years later, you figure it out. You don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. But
Well,
how about that person who does just close down and they don't talk about it? Do you kind of think that they really want to get your attention? Do you think they really want you to ask questions? They want you to be there for them? Or do you think they just are not going to share?
Well, I think a lot of times, again, those early life experiences can make us feel like we don't want to deal with conflict. We don't want to deal with anything negative. We internalize that it's our problem or our fault or somebody's out to get us. But I think it's more about being unsure of ourselves, not confident, not feeling empowered, not feeling capable, that we have value and that we can help the situation out. So oftentimes we'll just kind of shut down. And or you can do the opposite. You
That's what
may
I was going to
decide
say.
to,
Yeah.
and both of these things come from parenting from a place of fear. My life didn't go so great growing up, and I want to try to prevent that. I worry about that in my child. And so we either micromanage the kids, we tell them to jump and how high, we give them, we do anything and everything for them. Or we kind of shut down and disconnect and separate from them and just sort of give in all the time and just want to keep the peace. Either way, we're controlling pretty much every situation by avoiding the triggering, painful things that, come up for us from
Well, I
our
was
own
going to
past.
say, definitely some of us internalize. I am one. I internalize everything and analyze and try to figure out what I did wrong. But the opposite of that is the person who does not do that at all. And instead of internalizing and thinking, well, what can I do to change this situation? How can I help? That person says, it's your fault.
And they do the blame game, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
again, that's a way of controlling things. You're
Mm.
like deflecting it and saying, it's not me, it's not me. I haven't done anything wrong. And admitting your own faults is like something that feels super vulnerable to you. And it means it's a sign of weakness. And so you're definitely not going to do that, right? Because all your life you've had to protect yourself. You felt like you had to protect yourself from the tough things going on around you. And so now if you become vulnerable with somebody and you actually share what's happening with you and what you're feeling, it's like, oh no, that's a sign of weakness. I'm not going there. I'm gonna get hurt. And that again goes back to that first year of life bonding cycle in many cases.
Well, when it comes to marriage, personality styles, the behavior styles that I teach really do come to play in that. That some people are naturally fearful, some people are naturally short on patience, and anger is the first thing they go to. Some
Mhm.
people kind of step away, and like you said, they don't want any conflict. They don't want to. They don't talk about their feelings so much. And according to our personality style, definitely is how we deal with things. But honest to goodness, our values, our parents, gave us, not by telling us, but how they lived and what they did and what they actually said. There's people out there where they are one way when they are in public. It's a
Mhm.
scary thing. They're one way in public. They might be charming and wonderful. And then when they come in, they unload on their family. There's something that you shared with me before, and there was that saying that responsible. Let's see, a child
Respectful.
should be
Yes.
respectful, responsible, and fun to be with. And I wrote that down whenever we talked before because I thought, oh, well, that goes for spouses too, right?
Yeah, those I call those the three rules for any family, like the main or the key rules for any family: being respectful, responsible, and I like to say fun to be around. I learned this like 30 some years ago in my work with kids with attachment issues. But of course, not everybody feels fun to be around all the time. So there isn't like this, you have to be fun to be around. But if you're not, give your family a heads up and say, hey, I've had a rough day today. I'm not doing very well today. Excuse me, my allergies. I'm not doing very well today. And so I'm not feeling very fun to be around, but I can't just go off to my room because I'm mom and I've got to take care of dinner and I've got to, take care of the schedule and all the things. So I'm going to go through the motions. I'm going to do all of this, but just heads up, honey, and heads up, kids. Mom's not feeling very fun to be around today. Give them the courtesy of a heads up with that.
Keep it
But
cool.
and then right. And then in some people choose, instead of the fun to be around as the third step, it's safe. So respectful, responsible, and safe. I believe that if you're being respectful and you're being responsible, you're being safe. So I don't usually add that one, or at least not in my own home. But it is really true that um, if you follow those three things, you're going to have a pretty smooth ride at home, even when you come up against tough problems or tough challenges. You can bring it back to those three main rules. So,
Well, I know that three things that I like to say is people need to be heard, children need to be heard, and then we're going to talk about these. Children need to be seen, and they need to be appreciated. And often, how about whenever kids come along and you have two strong-minded people? You have a strong-minded parent. Now, the parent demands respect, and that's really important.
mhm,
But the child also needs to be respected. And what I find sometimes is that the overbearing parent is disrespectful to the child in the
right.
way that just because they're in the bad mood you were just talking about,
Yeah.
they like blow it off on the kid becomes frustrated. They're feeling like this is not fair, you know, they feel unloved, unappreciated, and that kind of thing. And, that happens in every family from time to time. We're in a bad mood. But if you live in that kind of environment all the time, it really
Yep.
takes a play on your confidence. The friends you choose, the spouse you choose, you might choose somebody who is just like that and they're unkind to you when you get married and now you have trouble in marriage, right? And
Yep.
then they pass it on to the kids.
Yep. Yeah.
So
I've
it's important to be heard and to develop those skills to listen even when you don't want to, right?
Right. Well, and obviously, if we're just demanding our kids do things and we're just doing a bunch of, sort of like drill sergeant military directing our kids and telling them what to do to jump and how high, that's going to come back around to us eventually when they're teenagers. They're going to have that learned behavior of, well, when I'm older, I just get to direct people and I get to demand and I get to say what I'm not going to do. And, so we breed that. So it's really about listening and hearing each other, and also that reciprocal respect for your child too. I think a lot of parenting, we think that our job is to teach our kids lessons, and that can be either that really nice parent that's like, okay, honey, you know, this is what you need to do because if you don't do this, then this will happen. And it's a really soft, kind of positive parenting voice. Or it's the parent who's like, you will do this or else, right? It's very directed,
Absolutely.
and we're kind of paving the way. Either one of those, your kid's still going to turn out one way or the other. Your kid's going to turn out. It may not be, you might have a kid who always needs assurance and always needs somebody to tell them what to do and how to do it and be there to encourage them and convince them they can do it. Or you might need the child who just really thrives on boundaries and rules and does not know how to live without somebody kind of in there controlling them and paving the way. The more ideal situation is to have that sort of middle ground parent who's a nice dose, an equal dose of each of those things that can teach and respond to our kids with respect and responsibility, with empathy, not sympathy, and with direction, but empowering direction, not telling them what to do and how to do it all the time. But we want to teach our kids from the inside out that they are capable of doing hard things. They are capable of making up for something that they did wrong, or making right something that they did wrong, or overcoming something that they messed up or didn't do exactly right, or somebody hurt somebody's feelings. We want them to feel empowered that, what, they can take care of that. We don't have to solve it for them, but we can walk alongside of them. We can encourage them and we can help them do hard things. But we want them to learn that they can do hard things on their own. So I think parenting is more about building confidence in your child than it is about teaching a lesson. The lessons come naturally. Many of us learned the natural lessons or the natural consequences of the things that, experiences that we had growing up. And why would we want to rob our kids of those opportunities by, smoothing everything over for them or making everything okay?
Yeah, I think I learned not to lie because my mom always knew. I learned to listen to what she said by making big mistakes that hurt really bad. I remember walking on bricks as a child,
Oh my.
and they were like pavers along, for a little place for a car to park. And she said, Connie, stay off those bricks. And I walked on those bricks because I like to walk on curbs still. I still walk on curbs. Um, but I walked on those bricks. I fell on those bricks, gashed my knee, blood all over my leg. And so I never forgot it. And I bet we could all name like at least 5 things we did as a kid. Our parents told us not to do. And that is how we learned. As long as we didn't kill ourselves, right? We're
That's right.
we're okay.
Right. And there can be really scary things that we don't want our kids to do, and we want to protect them. We can caution them. It's okay to caution our kids, but it's also really good to let them know that that's what we're doing. Hey, kiddo, I don't want you to go out with those friends tonight because I know there's going to be drinking, or I know there's going to be partying, and I know you've drank before or whatever. I can't control you when you're out, with your teenage friends. But what I can tell you is, I hope that when you're with those people, if you decide to go to that party or do that thing, I hope that some of you wears off on them.
Mm.
So that's different than, I don't want you to go because I think you're going to be influenced by the kids who are doing super risky behavior and, drinking or taking gummies or doing something that who knows what they're taking or doing, right? Instead of sending that message to your kid that you don't want them to go because you think they're going to be influenced by the other kids, turn that around and send the message of, I hope some of you wears off on them.
And teaching them to be a leader and to think for
Right.
themselves.
Right.
I want to go back to where you were talking about the questions earlier, where you're asking, like you were actually, it's before we started today, you were sharing a little bit. And, asking your child questions, and the same thing goes with getting along with your spouse sometimes, is gently asking questions where they can come up with their own answers to figure it out.
Oh, are you talking about my make it right technique?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So, we're going to screw up, and our kids are going to screw up too. We're going to do things that cause a problem for other people. We're going to do things that hurt somebody's feelings. Our kids are going to lie. They're going to get themselves caught in sticky situations, and then they're going to get caught. They're going to hurt other people, whether it was intentionally in the moment and they're, a 4 or 5 year old that's hitting another kid over the head with a toy because they wanted they want the toy, or they're mad at the kid, or they're a teenager who's saying something really rude or obnoxious or mean to another peer at school. All of those, or your spouse who loses your cool because you've had a stressful day and you take it out on your partner. All of these things, when we mess up, we have a tendency as adults to say, well, you better say you're sorry. You hurt that person. You did something wrong. You better say you're sorry. Or you owe me an apology for missing curfew. Or you owe me an apology for being late and snapping at me. All of those things, yes, an apology, and I'm sorry, an actual I'm sorry, and will you forgive me? Not can you forgive me, because they can, but will they? And will you forgive me? That's all great. And sorry, I saying I'm sorry is a great skill to have, and a thing to do. But if you're the person in the heat of the moment and you're not really sorry because you're still miffed or you're still mad or upset with that other
Usually,
person,
yeah.
yeah, having an adult tell you to say you're sorry in that moment, to basically force you to, you better say you're sorry or you're not going to go back and play or whatever, that's not really genuine. So now if you have two kids and this kid hurt the other kid and you say you're sorry, and the kid goes, sorry. Well, now the victim, the kid who was hit over the head or whatever it is, has not only been hit and harmed, they've been lied to. And then as adults, we say, okay, now the kid says sorry. And we say, okay, now go along and play. Like it's all that fixed everything. It just doesn't feel really good to me. That doesn't feel empowering to me. And it doesn't feel like we've had any real resolve. It just kind of feels like we're putting a band-aid on it, right? Making
Mind and
us
heart didn't change.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And so instead, I learned this technique years ago, again, working with kids with attachment issues, called the make it right technique. And so, and that's a freebie I'll give your audience today. I have a link for you, Connie. So there's 5 steps in the make it right technique. The first thing is, after a kiddo's done something, you go over to him and say, hey, what happened? And be curious. Our tone of voice and our approach, in these situations matters. We want our kids, if we're coming at them drill sergeant or too soft, like, oh honey, what'd you do, or you can't do that. Ooh, that's like fingernails on a chalkboard for a kid. That's not confident leadership. Instead, you go to the kid and you say, what happened? Be curious. Get them in the front part of the brain. Pull them out of the back part, the fight, flight, or freeze part. What happened? And you're super curious about it. Well, Joe took my toy and I was mad at him. And oh, I see. And what did you do? What happened? I hit him over the head. Good job,
Mm.
step. Good job being honest, or good job telling me the truth. Because we want to acknowledge, especially if you have a kiddo that lies a lot, you want to give any opportunity you can say good job being honest or good job telling the truth. You want to use, because it helps show them or help them believe that they can be honest. They're capable of it, even if it's really hard to admit what they did wrong. So good job being honest. And then step 3 is, what are you going to do to make it right? Do you notice my tone?
Hmm.
Tone and lilt matter.
Non-threatening.
I am curious about, what are you going to do? I'm not owning that problem. It's their problem, but I'm there with empathy to support them. What are you going to do to make it right? Or what are you going to do to make it up to them? Normally, especially the first time the kid hears this, they're like, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I'll say, I'm sorry, because kids are programmed. Just go say you're sorry. And I'll say, oh, that'd be great for you to go and say that you're sorry. What are you going to do to make it up to them? Or what are you going to do to make it right? I don't know. Step 4 is, have some ideas kind of in your back pocket of things that the child could do for another person that they've harmed or caused a problem for. And so those are random acts of kindness. Maybe it's, opening the car door if they've offended mom or dad. Maybe you're going to open the car door for mom and dad all week, or anywhere you go, to the store, anywhere you go. Maybe you're going to watch their favorite show with them instead of watching your favorite show. Maybe you're going to give them a hand massage with lotion or a foot rub. Maybe you're going to clear their dinner dishes. Maybe you're going to take one of their chores for them so that they have time to play or have fun or rest, and you're going to take over one of their chores. So what are you going to do to make it right? What are you going to do to make it up to that person? Maybe you're going to draw them a picture, send them a card, random acts of kindness, kind things for that person that person would actually enjoy. Right. And then once the child does that, then step 5 is to say, good job making it right. Give them a high five. Good job making it right. And then, as we say in the Midwest, life goes on and we keep her moving. Problem solved.
The what you just described also goes for adults and goes for couples, because hurting people hurt others, and whenever they can stop and figure out why am I acting like this all the time? And they can go to their spouse and do all five of the things that you just talked about. It
Mhm.
helps to resolve those frustrations. But when couples live without resolving frustration, without being able, some people can't say they're sorry
Yeah, I
because
agree.
they don't mean it. They're just not sorry.
Right.
And
And
it's
saying
hard
I'm
to,
sorry is a very vulnerable thing to, and it's admitting you're wrong. And there are people that just cannot admit they're wrong because when they've admitted they were wrong, something bad happened to them. So they have this block in admitting when they've made a mistake or done something wrong. And that, you know, a lot of times it comes off like they don't care. They have
mhm,
no
mhm.
emotion over it. But that's actually um not true. They actually care too much. So the people that'll say, I don't have empathy and they don't really show, I don't buy it. I don't buy it one bit. You're blocked off, you're closed off with that, but you're actually putting more emotion into it than what you're even willing to admit by shutting down and kind of like you're like afraid. That's the emotion is fear. You're afraid to admit that you were wrong,
So you
but you
think
can
whenever
put this
somebody,
armor on like you don't care. It's like, I see right through that.
so do you think whenever somebody doesn't say they're sorry, they can say they're sorry? And I'm talking about adults. Do you think that they're internalizing that at all? You think they care? Do you think you actually think they care and they just don't,
Well,
they
I
won't?
actually think that they fear. I think that they're afraid
Vulnerability.
and it's too vulnerable, so they'll shut out that emotion and they won't care. But they're
So,
actually putting fear emotion into it. They're too afraid to apologize and admit that they made a mistake.
so what is with those of us who always take responsibility? Like we just learned that as a kid. And so, or, why is that? Like I'm always, my husband and I both probably say we're sorry too much.
Mhm. Yeah.
Too much. You're like, my husband does it. I'm like, hey, it wasn't your fault. What are you saying you're sorry for? But we're
Yeah.
very much like that. But it's those couples that get caught in nobody apologizes, nobody makes it up to them, nobody makes it better. I think that's where a lot of problems come from.
Yeah, and that's the one I get the most when I have couples coming in and they have a challenge with their child and I'm coaching them on, how to help that make that problem a no problem. It really starts with the parents getting on the same page and I need to hear from both of them because they're typically both right. They just have different viewpoints of,
Seeing it in
of that,
different ways.
seen it in
Mhm.
different ways. And so we need to get to the parents first. The parents need to be a unified team. And I like to say 80 to 90% of the time. We're not looking for perfection. You're not always going to agree, but being able to allow one parent to handle the situation without you overstepping them and kind of interjecting and then rescuing the child from the parent's decision or consequence or whatever. Like that's just really key. And then being able to have that conversation with your spouse later, not in front of the child to say, hey, why'd you handle it that way? I didn't really agree
Absolutely.
with that. I had your back. I supported you on it, but I really need to know, like we need to have those conversations um, first. And we really need to be on the same page as a unified front with our kids. And or if we're going to have disagreements or differences, it's okay to have some of those differences in front of the child so the kid can see, as long as you're willing to work it out and come to a resolve before the child leaves the room. Like it's okay for kids to see parents arguing or being upset or having a heated discussion in front of the kids. I don't think we should be hiding that kind of stuff from our children because it's a really great opportunity for the child to see that people can get really mad, frustrated, upset, and they can find a resolve in that and still stay together.
And that's the important part is always finding a resolve, not leaving things, hanging. So
Mhm.
today, as we're looking at this, we are, children are always going to have trouble because they start out as an infant. I mean, they're figuring it out all their life. They're emulating their parents and what goes on around them. And they're always growing. But when we're an adult, like I said, if there was big, big challenges as a kid, you really do have to stop and think about what they were and address them, or they will pour into your relationship that you have. And you'll also pour them out onto your own children. So, as we finish up, Jaci, let's think about some things. What are some of the most important things for growing a confident child, because confident children make good choices in life because they're able to say, no, I'm not doing that. It's kind of like the elephant in the room you were talking about earlier. He's like, you've got about the kids drinking at a party. It's like addressing it before it happens, making them aware of, I know about these things. I'm not blind, right? But what are some of the top things that you think pour confidence into your children, as you, because a lot of times we pour our own deficiencies or inhibitions or whatever.
Yeah, into our kids, and
Mhm.
we want them to learn from our own mistakes by telling them about it and talking to them about it, but not actually letting them experience it. I do also want to say, Connie, before I forget, with the make it right technique, you're not going to go through those 5 steps with your spouse. You're because
Not
obviously,
exactly.
right? And not exactly. But you are going to say, hey, hon, I messed up. I yelled at you. I did whatever. I dropped the ball. What can I do to make it up to you? And I think that's really key in a marriage, that we make sure that we're doing those random acts of kindness for our spouses as well. But I really think that at the root of everything is helping our kids to become confident, feel good about themselves and who they are, not by convincing them to feel good, but by empowering them to problem solve and do scary, hard things, with empathy, letting them know that we believe they're capable, and instead of trying to fix or solve things for the child, trying to rescue them from the problems they've called, or the hard things that they're going through. Right in the definition of the word problem, it says a problem is a matter or a situation that's unwelcome or harmful and needing to be dealt with and overcome. So when we have a struggle or a problem with our kids, let's teach them that. Just say, hey, this is a problem. This is something that's unwelcome or harmful. We need to deal with it and overcome it. What do you want to do, kiddo? How can you make this right? How can you do this different? What do you need to do? And I'm here for you to help guide you and to lead the way. But I believe in you and I know you can do this. You can
There
do
you
hard
go.
things.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
like that. I like that. All right. Well, so I have on my front page of the Extraordinary Marriage, I have Finding Harmony in Marriage. And on the Extraordinary Marriage, you find a lot of things that help you identify those things that are causing you trouble in your marriage. Ultimately, a lot of times is that we have different personalities and we're button heads, or our personality is crushing our spouse. But all this, since we're talking about kids today, also goes into our children. We may be button heads with our kids because we're just alike, or we may be crushing their spirit, and that's certainly not going to build confidence. But you can find Finding Harmony in Marriage on the extraordinarymarriage.com on the front page. So, Jaci, what would your last word be today?
I just want to remind people that your marriage can be as wonderful as you want it to be, even in the presence of past trauma. And your parenting can be rooted in confidence rather than fear. It starts with understanding how your trauma affects your interactions, both with your partner and with your kiddos, right? And then working to break free from those old patterns. When you and your spouse commit to being unified, that is a game changer. You will see a difference in your kids' behavior almost immediately when they know mom and dad are on the same page. And so we can do hard things, we can do scary things. And as adults, we can make the decision to change things and to do things differently. Usually it takes the right support, the right people in your corner that are going to sing your praises, boost you up, empower you, and lift you up to help you become that confident leader that I say our kids crave us to be.
And whenever you learn great parenting skills, if you don't have them, you can go to Jaci and learn them, because if you didn't get them from your parents, you can still have great parenting skills. And when your kids are being behaved, you have a happier marriage because there's less friction and less frustration from parenting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I like that phrase of when mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. So, yeah,
And
I
that's
help teach you how to be that happy mama and help your kids learn that it's in their best interest to have a happy mama and dad. So, yeah,
I'll
it's so
second
fun.
that.
Parenting can be fun even when it's hard.
I'll second that. Well, thank you, Jaci.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much, Connie, for having me back again. It's always fun to talk to you and to connect.
Well, parenting is very important. Thank you.